Hiya. So how do you get from scales to language? This is kind of a big question, and I don't want to give you all the options because that's going to take hours and hours and hours. I obviously might make other videos based on this, but I just want to give you a couple of simple things that you can work on right away that can help you generate some interesting lines, and you can have fun mucking around with them and changing them around. So the basic sort of materials we're working with is just one scale today. It's the dominant scale, a Mixolydian scale, basic scale of bebop, I guess, and what Barry Harris tends to teach first, I think, for line construction. So we're going to do an actual Barry Harris exercise, which is just going to run the scale up to the 7th and back. We're going to do this over chord progression of the bridge of rhythm changes, which is 2 bars each of these chords going around a cycle of fifths, right? So it's just D7, G7, C7, F7, right? So we're going to do that, and it works like this. We're going to run the scale up to the 7th and back down again, because that occupies 2 bars of time, almost. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3. You do this. Whatever positions you want. It's a great little practice exercises to get you being able to run the scales, obviously, and fretboard map it out a bit more so you can, get everything in position and flow naturally from one chord to the other. Now, here's the thing. We run the scale up to the 7th. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, which gives us the chord tones of the chord, in this case D7, laid out really strongly, like that. So in a sense, it is a type of bebop scale in that sense, because bebop scales put the chord tones on the beat. So already it's starting to resemble language a bit more. Now another thing about this little exercise is it isolates each chord off on its own. So break. Break. And the reason why we do that in the exercises is, as I understand it, to give you a little chance to think about the next scale. So we're thinking in a modular way, and this is important, I think, for language construction. We're not necessarily thinking of every note. We're thinking of joining phrases together into longer sentences, paragraphs, and so on. And another little analogy that I find very useful is that of storytelling. Your solos are meant to tell a story. Each line can tell a story. So if I play something like this, so set up, a little bit of drama and then a resolution. I changed it slightly the second time, you'll notice, to add more drama. Okay, so set up, this is like 3-act structure of storytelling. Not all stories fit this format, but it's a useful tool used by many people to understand the art of storytelling. 3-act structure, set up, characters, setting everything are established, the basic sort of desires people have to drive the narrative forward, conflict as characters come into and drama as the characters sort of have conflicts and kind of work against each other, antagonists and protagonists sort of work against each other, and then eventually resolution when the story plays itself out, and this can be obviously a happy resolution or a sad resolution, or a dominant resolution, which is kind of another tension, like that, oh, this is the cliffhanger, we're going to have the sequel in a minute, okay, and obviously rhythm changes is all dominant chords, so it's a constant sort of cliffhanger. It's like a serial, it's like a soap opera. The bridge of rhythm changes is like a soap opera, because you keep on going to a new situation, and then you've got the tritone, so the evil twin comes out. So coming back into this, I'm going to talk about each section separately. So we want to set up. So the setup will have something to do with the D7 chord, this scale. Now obviously we just play the scale up and down, it'd be quite boring. I'm not going to talk about added note scales today, because that's a whole separate area. I will direct you to the Rotem Sivan video on it, which is pretty comprehensive, gives the basic Barry Harris rules, very clearly explained. And he sits down and he just plays everything, so you can hear it. So that is not something that need concerns today, but the important thing driving everything is rhythm. We want everything to come out right. So it's particularly important for resolutions, by the way. But the reason why we use added note scales, for instance, is because of rhythm, and like a lot of the half step stuff that we'll add in will be because of rhythmic considerations. So each scale, as I said, it's quite boring if you just play it straight up and down, is a combination of notes that can be played in thirds, for instance, or that kind of thing. We play in triads. Or fourth chords, 4-note chords, sorry, 7th chords. Like that, right? Or you could play it in bigger structures, 5-note chords, or anything bigger like that. You could add in half steps underneath. Like that, so on and so forth. So that last one I'm particularly fond of because I'm just going to take like an arpeggio, sorry, a chord, beg your pardon, a 4-note chord starting on A. The Barry Harris terminology is quite specific about this sort of stuff. So in this chord, you have these notes. It's kind of just stepping up through the scale in thirds based on the 7th scale. So you're missing out a note, missing out a note, missing out a note. Now we could also look at that, of course, as A minor 7th. But I think it's good to think of that as relating to the scale as well. I think on the guitar we tend to relate everything to chord symbols anyway, so that naturally tends to be in our head like A minor 7th. So that's what we're going to use anyway. And I'm going to use this nice little... So you can play each of these chords through the scale so that we've got a half step before and then a triplet. So we start on the upbeat, so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Like that, right? Sorry. That always annoys me, that position. I don't have a really good way of playing that. Anyway, so that buddy buddy bat, buddy buddy bat, buddy buddy bat. And this is a great, and I mean, slightly cliched way to start a bebop line, but it certainly has that bebop thing all over it. And you'll notice I mentioned it in one of my previous videos, so we'll use that as a way of kicking us off. Now, I think what might be nice is to do that. So this is what another Barry Harris thing, but you come across it all the time in jazz, like Wes Montgomery, for instance, Charlie Parker, and we end up on the 4th of the D7. And we do that, a little wraparound, a little enclosure of the 3rd F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Sorry, 1, 2. That's what I meant to play. Let's do it again. 2, 3, 4, 2. 2, 3, 4, 2. 2, 3, 4, 1. You know, got different positions you can play them in. Again, it's like good because you can explore those different positions. So that might not seem like a scale to you, but it's all basically based on that D7 tonality, and that little chromatic there and there. They're the standard sort of enclosures that you might find, or little embellishments, lower neighbour tones that you might find on any arpeggio or anything else. So they're not really part of the harmony, they're just there to kind of bulk things out a bit. If I did it without 1, 1, 2, and 3, that would obviously change the rhythm. And one thing you could do is you could do it, that's quite nice if you do the same thing. So you've got passing tone from 2 to 3 and then passing tone to 2. Different places to play it. That's a nice little phrase. So play around and stuff like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's the next one? 3, 4, 1. You know, it's I'm already exploring different positions. That's a nice little phrase on the guitar. You can play that with 3 fingers quite nicely, can't you? It's always a nice sign of a guitaristic phrase if you can do that. Imagine, you know, and then Wes Montgomery is somebody playing like that. So that's one example. Another example might be we could extend out that chord to very Wes Montgomery. 2, 3, 4. The advantage of this over just using a scale is that really you can use any rhythm you like on an arpeggio, which is one reason why we tend to teach them first. Sorry, fingering there. Yeah, so that gives you an option as well. And we can take, we're taking the A-7 or the 5/7 arpeggio over the 4, over the 5, sorry. We make use of that connection there. We can also use the, you know, the major 7th half step below, sorry, full step below. So over C7 we go say, and then it does sound very Wesy again. Wes like those suspended kind of dominant sounds you get when you put a C major or an A minor 9th over a D7 chord. He really liked that. He really dug that. So that's one good way to sound like Wes, I guess. And then if you put the 6th in, then you sound like more like Charlie Christian. If I put a minor 6th. A lot of this stuff I haven't really practiced. You know, it still remains to be explored because the possibilities are literally endless. But I wanted to go into conflict side of it a little bit, that middle section. So if, we've had our setup, that kind of thing. And now we're going to have a little bit of conflict and then resolution. So resolution shouldn't be overcooked. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Return of the King, the last Lord of the Rings movie was released, and everybody went, it's just got 18 endings. What's the point of that? Now I suppose those movies are generally considered to be classics, but you know, that idea of having like too much ending is a fair point. So we don't really want too much of the G chord. I reckon 2 notes will do. So that's the famous bebop phrase on the 5th and 3rd. Bebop, bebop. Okay, so we'll just use that. So we've got to get between to that, right? Almost sounds like language already. We might have to change that first phrase a little bit to make it effective for resolution. But one simple form of resolution that we can do is we can use a diminished 7th chord. So if I go... So that's 4 notes of diminished 7th. You can almost do that. Now the problem with that is with that, so I'm using an F sharp diminished 7th to get into the last 2 notes of that G major chord. So timing wise it works like this: 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. So those 1 and those notes are on the 1 and the and, the famous bebop phrase. Right. So it doesn't work rhythmically, right? Or you've got to leave a little gap there. You can't just have like 8th notes all the way. I'll just demonstrate what I mean by that. 1 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Okay, so we end up on the 1, right? So we need an extra note. So all I did there is I just added another lower neighbour, below the F sharp. Well, that's an honest to God bebop line if I've ever heard one. So let's try the next phrase. And what happens now? Can't remember. Oh yeah. Okay, can we put that in a slightly less low sounding position on the neck? So okay, that works. Oh, that's a nice fingering. Let's do the rest of the phrase. So now we want that bit to be in the same register. So was it? Oh, that's nice. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so first phrase. That's one. And then there's one. And then I suppose would be E. That's a bit of a low position. Let's try it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that position. So, that's it. So we go down. Ah, sorry, I missed that note. Yeah, okay. Ah. There we go. Okay, there we go. See, I haven't worked on that phrase before, so it's or certainly not in that fingering. So it's a good exercise for me as well. That's one example of the way I would kind of go from scales to vocabulary, and hopefully you can understand each step in that process. Now, obviously I could give you a lot more examples. I think the important thing to remember is, first of all, this sort of 3-act structure. People talk about 2-5-1s, but I prefer this more abstract way of looking at it. And it's kind of more emotional and more fun and more interesting, because we all relate to stories, right? Okay, now obviously we're not limited to using those ingredients, but even if we were, there's still things we could do. Like, for instance, maybe I would, put that phrase first. Okay, this is another classic bebop resolution. So putting that little bit first, and then that bit second, the arpeggio, and then a bit drama. So this is all set up here. And then drama, and then a slightly unexpected resolution there, because we're going to the 9th. So we've got like a ghost note in there, haven't we? By which I mean that note in the middle doesn't really matter what it is, it's just kind of rhythmic filler. I was using an open string at one point. So if I go, you see? Still works. Oh, my. I like the beat there, actually. Yeah, okay. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense. There's so much possibilities, so many possibilities in this line construction stuff that I can't really present all of them. But hopefully there's enough there that you can see how it works. And I'll do some more videos of this kind of process, just so you can see me do it, because I think it's quite useful. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please leave any comments below. Bye.